So, hello everybody, and a warm welcome from Ninox. I can see that, more and more participants are logging in. My name is Agatha. I work in the sales department here at Ninox, and I will be today's moderator. So, what can you expect from today? The main part of this online session will be taken by our founder, Frank Böhmer, as he will present the highlights of 3.7, a release which will bring some significant improvements to our platform. So to begin with, let me quickly guide you through the highlights of the release. First of all, the full line editing. So when you are in spreadsheet mode of a subtable, you're now able to edit fields in line. No need anymore to open the record and edit the data in the form view. Second, we have new print layout options. So our enterprise customers, that is a private cloud, or if you bought the on-premises product, you will be able to use our new print engine, which is based on Microsoft Word. So you can choose any available template and then merge it with the data that you have in Ninox. Third, we'll introduce enhanced PDF functionalities. As you know, you will always be able to store PDFs as attachments in Ninox. And now we also introduce the capability to make annotations or maybe add your signature to the PDF. And last but not least, our new SQL connector. Our enterprise clients will be able to use this feature going forward. And I will now stop sharing my screen. Frank will now lead you through these new features in detail and show you in demonstrations what benefit you gained from these improvements. At the end of the presentation, we will go through some of your questions. So if you have a question, please use the chat or preferably the Q&A section in Zoom and let us know what you would like to know about the release. Yeah, I think I'm gonna hand over to Frank now.
Thanks a lot, Agatha. Thanks for the nice introduction. And it's great that we can have this webinar today with hundreds of participants actually from all over the world. So really excited to give you some glimpse on the new features we implemented in release 3.7. And I thought, how can you present those 4 highlight features we're bringing? And I think the best way is to actually do it hands-on. So we will have, a small showcase and trying to integrate those new capabilities to something useful. And I will use as a showcase kind of an example company. Think about a balloon shop. So a balloon shop selling balloons over the internet. Now, a balloon shop already has kind of a website, and they are able to get new customers from that website. They have a web shop implementation in place, but they also need to write invoices, and they want to kind of connect their Ninox solution or build a Ninox solution to write invoices and to manage their customers, have a better overview. And we will try to bring those pieces together in a very short demonstration. And after that, we'll have time for some questions and hopefully answers. So let me share my screen now. Just gonna ask Agatha, do you see my screen with Ninox on it?
Yes, I do see it.
Perfect. So I am here on my personal private cloud, and I will now in this team release 3.7 create a new database, and we will do it from scratch because I think that's the best way to see how everything is constructed and fits together. We'll just focus on the bare minimum of things we need for our balloon shop. So I will give it a not so creative name. Let's say balloon shop. Shop. There we go. And obviously the first thing we want to have is customers. So let's create a small table for customers. As you are used to with Ninox, you can just create a table, add some fields like typical, let's say, base data fields for customers, like the first name and the last name. And obviously, we also need an address so that we can ship our nice balloons. And yeah, maybe an email. I think the email also is very important. So let's go with that. So we have a very standard table with Ninox customers, and I will just add my first customer here and say, okay, that's Mr. Hans Miller, and I will copy from my secret cheat sheet here some address information so that we don't have to type that. And also an email address, so that will be hans@miller.com. Please don't write that guy, maybe he exists. I'm not so sure. Okay, so we have customers now, and we want to write invoices. So I will set up also a table to manage our invoices, and I will call it invoice. And what do we have for an invoice? Typically, we have some invoice number, and we also have some invoice date. And we want to link it to our customers. Just drag the customer here into that table. And let's say it's just one customer for each invoice. So let's save that and go with it. And now we can write our first invoice 01 or 001. It's from today. And I will link it with Hans. Something is still missing. Actually, you also want to invoice some line items. Okay, so to create a subtable and call it line item maybe, and each line item has a description, and it will have a number for the units. We'll have a number for the price per unit. I call it unit price here. And we will set a number for MAT. This is a currency. Let's assume we are charging US dollars. And then obviously we also need to multiply the units by the unit price to get the amount. So there we go. This is all Ninox basics, so nothing new so far, but we will get there in a second. So let's just multiply the unit price with the units and say, okay, maybe also assign a number format here and say, okay, this is again US dollars. And there we go. Nice. I set up now my subtable here, hide unnecessary stuff. Maybe arrange the layout in a little bit better and appealing way. And now I can start to work and say, okay, Hans Miller actually ordered red balloons. And maybe 100, and one is 42 cents. And it's actually calculating here the amount. I will arrange my form a little bit to make it more visible. So this is all standard stuff you already know. Let's maybe also add a line for blue balloons or green balloons. And they are a little bit more expensive. Because green is an expensive color. And there we go. It's working so far. So now one of the first features I want to highlight today, Agatha already mentioned it, is the inline table editing capability. As you might know, we always had inline editing, we call it that way, in the main table. That means you can just double-click on a cell in the main table and work like you're used to in your normal Excel spreadsheet. Maybe change that number, for example, right? Can work with any table in that way. And it's a very powerful way to enter a lot of data, to make a lot of modifications. So when you're used to work in that way on a daily basis, you might feel in certain use cases that it's quite cumbersome with those subtables, like the line items here. Because every time I want to edit a line item, I have to go to it and make my edits, then close that, and go to the next line item. Of course, we do have some shortcuts here. We can, for example, navigate between those line items easily. But in the end, it's a lot of additional steps. And that's why multiple customers actually asked us to bring inline editing to subtables. And that's what we have. It's very accessible. You just double click here and you can work in kind of spreadsheet mode directly in the subtable. So just a little convenience feature, we are adding this release 3.7. Okay, so let's finalize our invoice example here by adding also a field for the total. How do we do that? We just go to the line items, we take the amount, and we sum it up, right? There we go. And this is our total amount. Now, let's come to the next feature or the next use case. It's about printing. You might know that Ninox has a built-in printing engine or print layout designer. That is actually quite capable for a lot of standard use cases. Like in this example, you can just create a print layout and arrange it in the way you want to have it. We can add information that's missing, like for example, the customer address, which is not yet here on our default layout. So let's just add a text box and insert some data, like the customer first name, and of course the customer's last name. Let's make this a little bit more wide here. And of course, also the customer address. There we go. And even our logo, we can easily insert in our default print engine by just inserting a static image. And let's take my nice logo. I already prepared some logos for the print shop. Let's put it here. So this is a nice layout. I can generate a PDF from it and send it to the customer. So all nice and fine. But this is a B2C use case, right? So having exact control over typography, about colors, and every little detail of our layout might be important. And sometimes maybe you also need to add more information. You have to create multi-page layouts and so on. So this is where this default print layout editor comes a little bit to its limits. And we thought long time actually how we can solve that. Obviously, we're in the business of building a database and not a platform, but building like all those word processing capabilities, that's just a huge endeavor. So our decision was to actually incorporate a service which is based on a very common format, docx. Docx, you might know from Microsoft Word. You can create that format also with pages, or you can use Google Docs to create any type of document in the docx format. And this is which is possible now with our new print engine. So let's assume, oops, totally wrong folder here. Let's assume marketing prepared a really nice invoice layout for us with Word. I'll show it to you in a second. Oh, wow. That's not from us, that's Word. Let's try again. Now we're good to go. So marketing created this beautiful layout for an invoice. and said, okay, you have your logo, you have your imagery. There we want to see the customer address, want to have some nice sentence, and obviously line items. And at the end of the document, by the way, we added 6 pages or so of terms. Yeah? So everything prepared. How do we get that into Ninox? Actually, it's quite easy because, yes, let's save that. Because now we have this new option, which is available with the tab Dynamic. When you click here, you can just import the Microsoft Word file or let's say docx file and create a print layout out of it. And I will call it fancy invoice. Oops, this is space maybe. So there we go. Unfortunately, this is all static, right? This does not represent what our actual invoice looks like. Okay, it's actually Hans Miller, but that's just by accident. And the units, all the figures here don't match what our real data represents. So how do I get this, should have saved, how do I get that information into my docx-based fancy invoice? Actually, there is a way to make those annotations here in the document. Yeah, so we can, just like you're used to from the Ninox print engine, can use curly braces here in the document and say, okay, here I want to see the customer first name. It's a little bit different syntax, but let's just try it. Yeah, so I put D dot in the beginning, and then I write customer dot first underscore name. The underscore is really important here. Same for the last name. So D dot in the beginning, and then I put customer dot last underscore name. So white spaces in our field names will be converted to underscore. The rest stays the same, basically. And of course, I can also put the address here. D dot customer dot address. So let's give this a try. I'll save the file as a new one and just call it 01 invoice. And go back to my Ninox and see if this works. How can I replace that? I just go here to the tab, right mouse button, and replace the document. Just upload it again. Replace. You will see, okay, now I have those placeholders, and they will be filled, hopefully, if everything works fine, by actually printing the document. So let's give it a try. And there you go. It almost looks good. Okay, I missed the space here. I'll insert that. And oops, our address gets a little bit messed up, so no line breaks. Here's a special trick, and you can learn a lot about those tricks and all the possibilities by actually looking at our documentation on docs.ninox.com. And there you will find a reference to the service we are using. It's carbone.io, and they have a precise documentation about all the options that are available. They go far beyond what I can tell you here in the webinar, but I think it's a great starting point, and you just need to explore the docs and learn step by step. So here, in order to kind of retain or preserve the line breaks, we need to add something. I again need to look at my cheat sheet. So I put some colon and then CRLF. I think this means convert carriage return line feed. And there we go. Let's again also use the first name here, customer first name. And now let's also start with yeah, including our line items. So in order to include the line items, you have to consider line items are actually an array, a repetitive group. And there's, again, a special syntax to make it happen. But once you learned it, it's kind of easy. So we go to d dot, and now line underscore item, and we put in square brackets an I, lowercase I, like the index I, and then again, description, dot description, right? I'll just copy that pattern here because I need it for the other fields as well. And here comes a little word messing with the tables. Don't let me. We'll fix that later. So I'll put d.line item of I.units. And again, I'll put the unit price with d.line items and then unit underscore price. And of course, the total amount I also want to have here. So d.line item amount. And a little bit special thing here to notice that I have to add at least 2 rows, otherwise our new engine won't recognize our intention here. So I have to put always I and then I plus 1. Yeah, same story here, just I plus 1 for the next row. And this way, the engine will know that it goes through all the line items, increasing always by 1 step. Yeah, so it will display in the end as many line items I have. And if I have only 1, it will also render only 1. So you don't have to worry about that. You have to worry about word tables a little bit, maybe. I don't know why it doesn't let me. Maybe that way. And here we put in the end, of course, e.total. So that is very easy. Let's save that. And let's try it out in our Ninox solution, Balloon Shop. So try replace the template with 0 1. Space. Okay. Cool, looks good so far. Let's check it. It's a little bit iterative process. Sometimes might make a small mistake with the names or so, but you only have to set up at once. I think that's the good story. And you have all the capabilities at hand that powerful text or word processor like Microsoft Word can offer you. You see everything is really in line as expected, and our data is filled. So I'm super happy about that result now. And that's it actually with printing. So there are a lot of capabilities on top of that. You can even include images from your data. If you have enough time, maybe I'll show that at the end of the presentation. But I want to move on and add a little bit of automation on top of that, because you cannot only use it using the user interface. Once you created that layout, you can also use it in your scripts. And that's just what I want to do. So let me add here a line break, and let's add maybe an image field. I will call it document to store the actual generated PDF. Yeah, so the idea is that with one button click, I can generate the PDF and store it in this document field. This is standard Linux scripting you might already know. But in this case, it also works now with with the new print engine. So how do I do that? I have one command which is called print and save record, and it takes two arguments. The first one is which record. I use the keyword this here in order to print the current invoice. And I need to specify the print layout. I have multiple print layouts, but in this case, I want to use the fancy one. So I use the fancy invoice. And this will kind of generate a temporary file, but I also want to store it in my record. So I need to use the function import file. And I give it a name so that the invoice document always has the same name. And I call it invoice.pdf. And in order to bring it to the field I just created, I just need to assign it here, right? So I assign to the field document the file that I import from the temporary URL which print and save record generates. So a little bit of functions combined, but a very common pattern. So I think you will be able to look that up also on our forum, for example. And let me now try if this works. I hope it does. I have to admit that my private cloud here has a technical issue, so it won't show the PDF thumbnail. Normally you would see the thumbnail. But as you can see, everything is as expected. So nice, I can automatically generate that document. And just coming back to the function. So print and the new thing here is that print and save record works with Carbon-based or Word-based print layouts, just as you are used to with other print layouts. Okay, so one thing I now want to show you is actually our capabilities to work with PDF. As you've seen, the document is generated as a PDF. I can preview it. But with release 3.7, we're introducing a new feature which will allow you to also modify the PDF or annotate it. Yeah, and this feature is accessible here from the context menu. You can just click on Edit PDF. It will bring up more holistic view here. You have some control, actually a lot of controls. So the first one will bring up a panel similar to like preview, for example. To preview applications, you can navigate through the whole document with different zoom levels. Can kind of navigate in different ways through the document. So it's also a nice way to actually see the PDF. Again, here, sorry, normally the watermarks are not here. This is just a problem of my installation. You can zoom, yeah, typical stuff to actually view the document. You can now also add annotations. And we have a lot of different fields, so you can insert text, you can just draw boxes, or just write on the document to make, maybe if you're in the field and you have a construction plan, so you can easily annotate certain aspects of that plan. You can also insert more ordered shapes. So all the features you would usually expect from such an annotation capability, and also, of course, get rid of it. So here you even see kind of the capability to add signatures. So if you have, like, it's not so easy to use on my touchpad, but if you have it on a touch device, you would be able to nicely insert your signature, or even add a stamp. So a lot of features to add annotations, to insert comments, and all that directly accessible here in context. It's important to note that it does not really modify your original file. Instead, we are saving the annotations as an attachment or as an additional file. It will take the same name and have this extension. So just to realize when you're working with that features, those additional attachments will be generated. You could actually from that editor, for example, print the document in order to merge annotations to one document again. And we are definitely in the process of learning that feature more and more and also improving it. It is not yet available on the mobile apps, but this will happen in one of the follow-up minor releases. So you don't have to wait too long to get this on mobile apps. And we also might work into the direction to make some of those features available from the scripting language. So additional enhancements are to be expected around that feature. The next thing I would like to present now is going even a little bit more technical and deeper. So we are more and more in a transition here in our presentation from no code to low code. As you can see, I already had a lot of scripting and functions in our Word template. The next thing I would definitely put into the bracket of low code. As I mentioned in the beginning, we want to integrate that solution with another, let's say, shop system. And that shop system is based on an SQL database. And that's why we created the SQL connector. Let me show you how this works. So with Ninox, we will now have the option to create a connection to an SQL server. And you can access that. It's only available on the Ninox Enterprise plan with our private cloud product line at the moment. You can access that with the server administration panel. And here you see we have a new tab called SQL Connections. Now just create a new connection. We are supporting two types of databases at the moment. One is PostgreSQL or PostgreSQL. And one is the Microsoft SQL Server. So let's call this, I call it ERP for some reason. And let's say this connection is active. The other things we need is basically the host of the server, the name of the database, and user and password for authentication. I have this set up again on my secret cheat sheet. So I'll cut it here. This is our server name. So I just actually set up a normal SQL Server 2019 on AWS. So just a couple of clicks or something like that can be achieved. And I prepared a very small database. It's called Order Management. We have a user. Please don't do this in practice. In this case, the admin user. And of course, a password. I'll just put it here, save, and restart the server. So I have to create this connection once in order to be able to use it by its name. Yeah, so the name here is really important now, ERP, because I will be using it in my database, in my Balloon Shop database. And I can show you the basics here on the console. So we do have a new command. It's called query connection. And that command basically takes two string arguments. The first one is the name of the connection. So that's an easy one. It's just ERP. The second one is SQL. Yeah, so if you know SQL, then it can be easy. And I will, if I don't know by heart, just copy again, a string from my cheat sheet. So in this case, I will query the connection ERP, which points to a specific database on the Microsoft SQL Server, and I will select some data from a table here. Yeah, so we have fields like customer ID, first name, last name, address, email. Let's spare that out. It's not relevant here. And yeah, there we go. Let me run that query, and it will give me an error because those queries can be actually not executed in the context of our client. I always need to make sure that my script runs on the server, and in Ninox I can just do this as the do as server block, right? And there we go. So I get back kind of a lot of complex JSON structures, but basically it's an object holding one argument result, and that result is an array, and each item of that array contains my actual data. So the customer ID 1, the first name Hans, the last name Miller, and so on. So that's nice because based on that, I can actually make sure that I kind of sync my customer table I already have in Ninox with the data from that shop system, from the ERP. In order to do that, I will set up now a script, right? And let me maybe put that in a special context. I will call it, I'll create a table called dashboard. And yeah, I just created, and I will create one record and use here our form view to show that record. Let me remove the default view. And now here I put one button, and the intention of that button will be to sync our customers. To keep it more simple in this case, I will sync in one direction, right? I will sync my customers from the SQL Microsoft SQL Server database to Ninox. And how do I do that? Well, first of all, again, I make sure it all runs on the server. And again, I will copy my query and say, okay, I have a query to issue to the server, and it's a string, right? So I do a select from all those fields, not this one, from the table customer, and I get the result, or let's say the response, by just, yeah, using query connection, oops, from ERP and that query, right? Okay. So now the next idea is to go through all those items in our object or in our result array. So in this case, I will use a for loop and say for item in response. And remember, it had one property called result. For each item, I want to do something. And basically, what I want to do is I want to see if I have a particular record in my Ninox customers that already matches the record in the SQL database. So in order to make that happen, let me just go out of that context here and make sure that I have the ID of the customer also stored in Ninox, and I call it ERP ID, right? Okay. So, because everything is set up here in a way that we actually have Hans Miller already also in our other database, and I do know it has the ID 1, I'll put it here. We'll see in a second the effect. Okay, let's go back into our script. So for each item in our result set, we now check if we have a corresponding customer. How do I do that? I just ask Ninox. Yeah. I get the first record from our Ninox table customer where the field ERP ID is equal to the record of our SQL database. And so again, I'm doing something wrong. Customers. Oh yeah, okay, it was called customers. So now I have either I found a customer like Hans Miller if with the ID 1. If they match, I will have one, or I don't have one. So let's say I don't have one. Then it's a new one, right? If it's a new one, I will just create it. And in this case, I need to get the ID. And I will assign the ERP ID to it. Okay, so let's repeat. I look up in my table customers, do I have a record which matches the ID from my SQL database? If so, everything fine. If not, I will create a new customer and assign that ID. And then just the other fields, I will just update. Customer first name, oops, auto completion here. Customer first name will be our item dot customer name. Last name, similar. And address, same story. And finally, email, also very easy. There we go. Let me check. I think that should do the job. And let's give it a try. You see, we have one record representing the customers here. I'll give you a glimpse on our SQL database. So in our SQL database, select start from customer. We actually have two records. And let's run now our script and see what happens. Sync customers. Okay, nothing maybe. Oh, no, it worked. So still, Hans Miller is the same record here. Didn't change that much. Lisa Schmidt is new. And now let's maybe update. Oops. Customer set. I will update Lisa with a new email. Lisa at web.de or gmail.com for that matter. Please don't write her again. And yeah, let's maybe put a where condition where customer ID is 2. Hope that works. I'm not that good with SQL. Select customer. Start from customer. So looks good. Lisa has an email now. And now let's come to the final step and see if our synchronization works. Yes, it worked very fine. So all the fields are synced. Of course, I can do anything with the customers here as I can do with any other table in Ninox. And you see that, for example, Hans' relation to the invoice has been retained. So it's a very nice way to sync data from a SQL database into your Ninox solution. You can also do it the other way around, because basically with query connection, you can issue any SQL command you want. Of course, it's a sharp sort. You need to know what you're doing, but it's, I think, a very accessible way to integrate Postgre or Microsoft SQL Server with your Linux solution. So I think we don't have too much time, so I won't go any further with additional fancy automations. Actually, I wanted to show how we can now combine the synchronization of customer orders with then generating the invoice document and sending it out to the actual customer. So that would be just a couple of steps, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. But I think you can already see where this can lead. And yeah, very powerful features. I think we added with release 3.7 in combination can create cool results. So I'm closing the presentation now at this point, and I think it's the right point in time to handle a couple of questions.
Yes, sure. Hi. So yeah, thank you very much for that interesting demonstration and also detailed demonstration. I think our clients really appreciate that. We've had some great comments about the inline editing, about the new print functionalities, and yeah, but there are also some questions. So for example, there is one question about the inline editing and views. Do you, or can you say anything about if we plan to implement that also for views?
Yes, yes, I think that's a very fair point. We started to bring inline editing to subtables in the first place because that's most needed. Views are a little bit more advanced feature, so we thought we can bring the feature of inline editing in iterations, and it will already add a lot of value. Views are based on the same component internally in Linux, and we will definitely make it available with one of the next releases.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Thank you very much for sharing. Yes, and then what about the new print engine in the private cloud and in the on-premises product and pricing?
Yeah, yeah, fair point. Agatha, maybe you can also show the slide that explains a little bit the versions.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Actually, that it's a good point. So the new printing engine will be first made available on our private cloud and on-premise product lines as part of the enterprise plan. It won't incur additional prices on that plan, and it will be available as soon as we roll out the 3.7 release for our private cloud customers, which will start on 20th of September. I will only make that remark that we are planning to bring this new feature also to other product lines, so that everyone in the end will be able to benefit from that feature.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I can also see we have some questions about, can I use this in the Mac app and in the starter app version? So yeah, I hope that this clears it a little bit.
Yeah. I think on a note to that, maybe on the standalone Mac app without a cloud subscription, it will most likely not be available, unfortunately. But for all our subscription-based plans, we will make it in chunks available with certain usage quota. In terms of technical implementation right now, it's only usable through the web browser, but that will change very soon. Yeah, so everybody with a private cloud combining it with a Mac app will also be able to use it from the Mac app directly.
Okay, okay, very cool. There's also one question about information or detailed information about the release. So as you can see on the slide now on the screen, so we do have some release notes, and I suggest we'll send them to all the participants in the webinar and also to those who couldn't make it, so you have the full overview of the new features. Yeah, one more question that I found interesting and maybe a bit specific regarding a function of the new print engine. If we plan to implement QR code or barcode generators in that print engine, you have any idea how you could do that?
Actually, I'm not totally sure if it is possible already with that service. That's maybe something we can clarify later on.
Yeah.
Generally, we know that QR codes and barcodes are very important and are used in a lot of use cases. There are some solutions also you can look up on the forum, for example. So some ways to utilize barcodes and QR codes already within Ninox. But I think it's a really important feature, yeah. So it's a good suggestion to think about making this a core functionality.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, so there are many questions coming in. I think we don't have too much time to answer all of them now. So just as a general remark, if you want to give us some feedback, and of course we want to receive your feedback regarding the new release, or you have some kind of question, feel free please to also reach out to us to support, for example, and then we'll answer your question. All right. Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you very much for participating. And Frank, thanks for your very detailed presentations. Very cool. Wish you all much success with the new release of Ninox.
Thank you so much, Agathe. Thanks everybody for participating. Bye-bye.
Have a nice day. Bye.